this video, I'm going to tell my marathon running story, who I am, why I started running, how I won my first marathon, running a 3:05:46 in Bergen in 2019, and how I ran a 2:46:44 marathon that same year. So when I started running as a child, I thought it was extremely boring and extremely tiresome. I absolutely did not see the point of running. Like, why would you run just to feel tired? I did do pretty well. I was at the top of my class, but again, I just didn't see the point. And looking back, part of the problem was that I did do well, even though this probably sounds extremely weird. Because I did do well, I put pressure on myself to do better, and I always pushed myself, but because I thought it was boring, I wasn't conditioned to run and I wasn't in shape despite doing well. Remember, I would go out 2 weeks before a running test and I would be running like a lot, and not especially far or anything, but I would go as fast as absolutely possible. I definitely did not warm up. I ran these hills close to where I live, and it was just like, now I'm so good, like I'm pushing it. And it actually worked, and that was the sad part, because me getting in shape pretty quickly, that made me think that this was the way to do it. So reflecting back on my time as a sailor, that sport really taught me a lot, because I was really bad when there was a lot of wind. I was way too light and I would be dead last. And that taught me to compare myself to myself and just really focus on the input. I was gonna do the best that I could do out of the situation, and I was not gonna give up. And I'm not even kidding, like those hours being out there, it just like proved to myself, I proved to myself that I can do hard things. And at the end of it, I will feel so much better, because it's not something that came naturally for me. And I think that that mindset I really brought into running, and that was probably one of the reasons why I signed up for the Bergen Marathon, because I knew I strived out of doing something challenging. So when I was 18, I started college and I decided to quit sailing. So instead, I signed up for the basketball team and the badminton team. And then the year after, I signed up for the ultimate frisbee team. And I was known for being the friend who just like hated running. But when there was some team sport and some goal, like, you know, basketball or badminton, it was a lot funner for me. So when I went to Boston in 2018, that's when I went for a run with my mom and my brother, because there really wasn't that much equipment, so I had to find other ways to be active. And that's when I really realized how running slow was so much funner. The whole not pushing yourself to exhaustion was how running became enjoyable for me. And then when I went to UC Berkeley for an exchange semester, I again didn't have a gym membership, so I started running just to see the scenery. And I didn't have this goal of running a certain time and just running like my best, like I had when I was running in elementary school and in high school. So at UC Berkeley, I ran quite a bit and I started running a lot longer. So I realized that when I was running slowly, I could go for much longer, and it wasn't even like I had to go X distance. I never really had like an idea of how long I was supposed to go, and that made the running so much funner for me too. Again, not having that like concrete, I have to do that and I have to do this, which I had with sailing. And then when I came back to Bergen after UC Berkeley, then I only ran about once per week. I think that run was a little bit longer because I enjoyed going out for longer. And then I did basketball, badminton, and ultimate frisbee. And I did a bunch of fitness classes. And I also did some indoor cycling intervals, and then occasionally I would do like an indoor running class. There was no structure to my training. It was just like super random, and looking back, it was definitely like a lot of overtraining. I never had like a thought that I was trying to undereat. Like that was one of my weaknesses, that I really didn't know anything about nutrition, and I was constantly eating, but looking back, I was definitely not eating the right foods and at the right time. It was just all very random, and that I can definitely look back at it and see how my energy levels could have been a lot higher if I had been on top of it. So in 2019, a year after I really started to run, I signed up for this race called Bergensbaneløpet, which is a race between the two competing business schools in Norway. And very spontaneous. I don't think anyone at the school had really ever seen me run. I've been doing a lot of team sports, and I also lifted a lot of weights. And then, I didn't know anything about a taper. I didn't know anything about really rest, if I'm being completely honest. As you can already tell, I was just doing a lot of random stuff. But then I signed up for this race, and I think I placed like second, which was really good. And then I think I signed up for the Bergen Marathon maybe a month after. I at least remember that I signed up like 3 weeks before, and everyone thought I was crazy, right? Like I hadn't had a specific running plan. This wasn't this wasn't a goal of mine, but this was very typical me. I just thought like, oh, I want to do that, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I was just so sure that I'll be fine, and that probably came a lot from sailing and this mindset that really I can do anything that's hard, which is a good thing. But again, I didn't have a plan, and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And not only that, prioritization was something that I really did not know anything about at that time. So I wanted to do it all. So I went to Paris to visit my friend, and I partied there. And I did run a lot those 3 weeks, so it's not like I didn't do anything, but again, it was just me kind of randomly running different distances right before, and no plan. Week before I was gonna run the Bergen Marathon, I remember talking to another runner who had run several marathons, and he told me that, Caroline, when you run more than 2 hours, something happens to your body. So you need to practice that. And that's when I was like, oh, like I've never run over 2 hours. So of course, idiot Caroline, looking back, goes out and runs basically a marathon like 4 days before the actual marathon. So that was definitely not the smartest. I remember the day before the marathon, I also struggled to like run. Like I was having issues on my left knee. But what was crazy about that marathon was I showed up pretty late to the start, and I was with some pretty fast runners, and I just kind of kept at that pace that they were going, because I did feel like it was a relatively comfortable pace. Like obviously it was uncomfortable running at a faster pace than basically all my easy runs. But I was really surprised by how good I felt running at that faster pace. And there was this guy who was just like keeping a very steady pace. I remember just like sticking with him. Like he had like an orange t-shirt, and I just could always see him. And I was running with my headphones, and my boyfriend, he kept calling me to just check on me, right? Because everyone thought I was crazy. I signed up 3 weeks before, and the whole thing was just very random. And he told me that I was leading. And I don't think it really hit me, right? Because it seemed so surreal. But at the end of it, when I finished, I realized that I'd won the marathon. And that's really the beginning of me changing everything about my approach, because I knew that there was so much I just did not do optimal, right? I didn't have a training plan. I was just all over with my structure of my training, but I knew that I had the mindset and I knew that I had the talent, and yeah, I just really wanted to see how good I could get if I started doing things smart. Reflecting back on my time as a sailor. Jeg klarer ikke dette, det er helt krise. Det så interessant, man har lyst til å gjøre seg selv liten, akkurat det de snakket om i det kurset. Ok, dette dриtkleint å snakke om disse tingene her.